reading food labels. After this lesson, you'll be able to identify and interpret information on food labels. You should be able to use food labels and drink labels to make healthier choices, and be able to interpret food labels to identify those that are high or low in fat, salt and sugar. Now have a look at this food packaging. We've got the orange juice here. What are we looking at? Why do most foods and drinks come in a package? Well, the reason is that it's there to protect the food and drink from damage or spilling. It also keeps it safe from bacteria, pollution and vermin being things like mice, rats and some insects. And the food packaging also gives us information about the food or drink that's inside. So have a think, what food or drink have you had recently that came in a package? The information about a food is shown on the label. What information would you expect to see on a food or drinks label? Well, there's some things that need to be there by law. And these would be the name of the product, the weight or the volume of the product, a date mark, i.e. a use by date or a best before date, the ingredients, what makes up the product, a country of origin, where it came from, storage instructions, how to keep it at its best, allergens. There would also sometimes be cooking instructions. So can you see all these in the label? So we'll just go through this particular one. This is cornflakes. So we see the name, it says cornflakes. We see the weight, which is 500 grams. We see a date mark, and it tells us here that the best before date we need to look at the top of the package. We see the ingredients. We see its country of origin, and this was produced in France. We see in storage instructions, which would be, once opened, store in an airtight container for best quality. And then the allergen information, it's telling us that the allergens are in bold. And if we look at our ingredients, which start with maize, the allergen that's in bold there is barley. So have a look at any food packaging you've got nearby, and can you see all this information on the label? Now, a label helps us to make a healthier choice. They tell us what's in the food or drink so that we can choose. And generally we need to eat less fats, sugars and salts. And we can use that food label to help us check how much of these are in our food. How much fat and salt and sugar are in the food? Well, there's two amounts for each. There's the one amount which is for 100 grams of the food, and the other is for a portion. Have a look at any packaging that you've got nearby. How much salt does it have per 100 gram and per portion? The label gives us information per 100 grams so that we can compare different foods. The label often gives us the information about the size of a portion as well. And this is the amount that we are more likely to eat. So what do you notice about the fat in 100 grams compared with the portion of low-fat spread? The 100 grams amount helps us to compare it to other foods, but we would never eat 100 grams of spread. In this particular example, it's 10 grams. The portion helps us see how much fat would be in an amount that we were more likely to eat. So have a look at the food package you've got nearby. How much fat does it have per 100 gram and per portion? Now, it's healthier to choose foods that are low in fat, sugars and salts. And how do we know if a food is low or high in fat, sugar and salt? Well, there's a traffic light system in some packaging which tells us what's high and what's low. For the 100 grams of the food or drink, it's high if the fat is more than 17.5 grams. It's low if it's 3 grams or less of fat, It's high if it's more than 22.5 grams of sugar, and it's low if it's 5 grams or less of sugar. And it's high if it's more than 1.5 grams of salt, and it's low if it's 0.3 grams or less of salt. So we'll read the amount of fat, not the saturated, and we'll look at the 100 gram column. And in this example, we've got the food is high in fat. It contains 32.9 grams of fat per 100 grams of food, which is more than 17.5 grams of fat. And looking here at the sugar, and we're looking at under carbohydrates where it says all which are sugars. In this example, it's a pizza. It's 2.5 grams of which are sugars, which is low because it's less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 gram of food. We're looking at the salt in these foods. And on the one on the left, the food is high in salt because it contains 3.9 grams per 100 gram of food, which is more than 1.5 grams of salt in the food per 100 grams. And the one on the right, the food is low in salt because it contains 0.01 gram per 100 gram of the food, and that is less than 0.3 grams or less for salt per 100 gram of food. Now looking at these cheddar cheeses, what do you notice about the fat of these two types of cheeses? The ordinary one is 34.2 grams of fat per 100 gram. That's higher than 17.5 grams. But have a look there at the reduced fat. It's 24 grams of fat per 100 gram of the food. That is still high. It's still more than 17.5 grams per 100 gram of the food. So they're both high, as they contain more than 17.5 grams of fat per the 100 gram of food. Have a look at these mueslis. What do you notice about the sugar in these two types of mueslis? Remember, we're looking at carbohydrates, all which are sugars. And the one on the left, well, that's neither high nor low because it's in between the high, because it's less than 22.5 grams, but it's still more than the low, which is 5 grams. So it's got to be in the middle. The reduced sugar muesli is 16 grams. That still is not low because it's not less than 5 grams or less of sugar per 100 gram, but it's under the 22.5 grams. So they're neither high nor low. They'll be in the amber section. And amber section means proceed with caution. Just be aware that you know that it's not quite high, it's not quite low. You need to be aware. We'll have a look at these two baked beans. So have a look at the salt on the two baked beans. So we've got the ordinary baked beans. The salt is 0.6 grams. Now that's neither high nor low because the high should be 1.5 grams per 100 gram of food, and a low would be 0.3 grams or less of salt per food. And the reduced salt is still higher than the low mark, which would be 0.3 grams of salt or less per 100 gram of food. So for the baked beans, they're again neither high nor low. They're in the amber section. Proceed with caution. Why don't you have a look at the food packaging you've got nearby? Have a look about How much fat, salt or sugar does it have per 100 gram and per portion? And can you compare it with another food label? And between the labels, which has the highest or the lowest fats, sugars or salts? And use the traffic light system to help you compare.